I think they deserve a round of applause. I want to thank Brian Latina. He was the one that suggested that we invite the Boy Scouts and lead this session tonight. So thank you. For those who don't know, I'm Paul Regazio from the Chelmsford Republican Town Committee. We're an active group of about 35 members and several friends and associates that we meet monthly on the third Thursday of each month at the Chelmsford Library. We're an active group, and we try to obviously push our Republican ideals of smaller government, lower taxes, and an active and independent citizenship. But tonight, this is a nonpartisan event. During this past year, 2013, as I said, we were active. We did obtain over 1,000 signatures to rescind the forever increase in gas tax, and hopefully that will get on the ballot this November. For those who are not aware, Massachusetts gas tax has been tied to the cost of living, so it will automatically go up every year in the future, unless it's reversed. And also this past year, in view of our youth in the locality in Chelmsford, we gave out $750 worth of scholarships to graduating seniors. They had to write an essay on what is the most important, I believe, of the Bill of Rights, most important amendment in the Bill of Rights, the first 10. And we had several applicants, and we gave out 3 scholarships. And we hope to do that again this year. Tonight, though, we're proud to host this debate between the 2 contested races in Chelmsford, one for the selectman position and one for the town moderator position. And also, we do plan to have a later debate in the fall before the national election or the state elections. As we say, an informed citizenship is the best voter. At this time, I'd like to turn the podium over to Brian Latina, who graciously decided to agree to be the moderator for this debate, and I'll ask him to come forward. Thank you.
I should probably correct that a little bit. I left the meeting early, to be exactly precise. I'd like to welcome you all as well. We have 2 contested races, and I think we have 2 soon-to-be campaigning again moderator folks. They can come down and sit in our seats here. Mr. Richard DeFreitas and Mr. John Curlin.
Brian.
Pleasure, thank you.
Dick, thank you.
I'd like to also recognize that we have a timed event here. We have Trace working our times here. The candidates will have 1 minute to respond to the questions from the moderator or from each other or from the press. And at 15 seconds to go, Trace will hold up a yellow sign to our candidates so that they'll know that they have a little bit longer to speak. And then at 1 minute, he'll hold up a red sign asking them to please stop speaking. If they continue on, I'll point at them, and we have a bell system that's available, a little bell. And then if I wink at them, a great big one. Okay. Republicans are a little bit louder than Democrats sometimes, and you may see that this evening. And gentlemen, I thank you very much for running. The town moderator is a critically important job in our town and any town. It requires a person to keep their opinions to themselves and to listen to someone that talks too long like me and politely has me step aside at the time appropriate. It's a big job, and I really appreciate both of you running. I'd like to read the the profiles. We ask the two candidates to give a profile, and it gives them a chance to kind of settle into their seats. It's very nerve-wracking to be in front of a crowd, although they're expert at it now. They've had a couple debates already. First, I'd like to introduce John Curlin. His wife Sarah and their family moved to Chelmsford in 1991 because of the outstanding school system. John moved his law offices to Chelmsford in 1994 and has been a partner in the firm of Curlin and Grossman for over 33 years. John's qualifications for town moderator include having been a recent former selectman and chairman of the board during his final year, a former member of the Chelmsford Finance Committee for nearly 8 years, and chairman of the Chelmsford Finance Committee for 2 years. He was a town meeting representative since 2005 for Precinct 5, and he is now the one of the Precinct 1 town meeting representatives. He's also a founding member of the Greater Lowell Alzheimer's Association and the chairman of the board of directors of Goodwill Industries of Merrimack Valley for the last 5 years and recognized as the 1996 Volunteer of the Year. He's a member of the Lowell Rotary Club since 1985 and was the past president. And he's also the past director of the Greater Lowell YMCA. That's John Curlin. And Mr. DeFreitas, Richard DeFreitas, and his wife Patricia have 6 children, 19 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren between them. Dick belongs to the following local organizations: the Rotary Club, the Lodge of Elks, and the Chelmsford Business Association. Having graduated from Chelmsford High School in 1957, he was inducted into the Chelmsford School Hall of Fame in 2008. Dick received a BSEE, Bachelor of Science Electrical Engineering from Lowell Technical Institute in 1964, and he was the founder of Delta Lab Research Incorporated in Chelmsford, which employed 100 workers. Presently, he is the CFO of ABC Payroll in North Chelmsford. Dick was an original town meeting representative. 2 years later, he was elected to the Board of Selectmen. He was the Board of Selectmen chairman from 1993 to 1994, and he became a library trustee in 1999, and once again, a town meeting representative in 2001. 3 years ago, Dick DeFreitas was elected and has served as the town meeting moderator. He now stands before you as a candidate for re-election. The debate committee asked. Usually, we ask questions and we get an answer from them. In this case, we actually gave them a partial statement and asked them to complete the statement. I have that here, but rather than reading that, what I asked both of the gentlemen to do is to give me an executive summary in their own words of the statement that I started for them. And they could continue and talk a little bit more about it. But executive statements are an important component of town meeting. And I'm just to make it clear, I've been sitting on a committee that was formed after our last town meeting called the MARCOM Committee to review all of our rules. We haven't reviewed the rules in town meeting in about 30 years. We've had a few procedural changes and some other things. So I'm sitting on that committee, and one of the points of the committee was that we'd like to see an executive summary on some of the complex warrant articles. Instead of having all the language presented to town meeting, give us an executive summary so we can understand the gist of it, because we should have done our homework and should know some of the details. So, Mr. Curlin, if you wouldn't mind, an executive summary of the statement that I started, and you can start with the statement if you wouldn't mind.
Well, you've got the statement.
Okay. I'll read the beginning of it. From the beginning of this campaign until now, I discovered something about the office of moderator that I didn't know, and something else that I now really appreciate.
So I've prepared a bullet point executive summary if you want, or I can read my prepared text.
Either one.
I would
I'll leave it
prefer
to
the
you.
prepared text. I didn't know that the fact that this campaign is unlike any run in town for 30 years The approach to campaigning is one in which I must distinguish myself not on the issues, but on my attitude and demeanor. I have to demonstrate that my leadership style is a better fit for Chelmsford than my opponents. This position is nonpartisan, so it is important to conduct myself as I did for 8 years as the member of the Finance Committee. During those years, no one had any idea as to my political leanings. If you ask anyone who served with me on FinCom, they will agree, and I enjoy the support of most of them now. As an attorney, I have represented clients on occasion where I've had to advocate for positions that I did not share. That is considerably more challenging than being nonpartisan and neutral. I have done it before and I can easily do it again. This campaign could have easily deteriorated into personal attacks. Anyone watching the debates know that I have not attacked Mr. DeFreitas personally. I may disagree with his approach and some of his actions, but I respect him and I appreciate his service to the town.
Thank you. Mr. DeFreitas, I guess I would like to hear a little bit longer than an executive summary.
Okay. Your statement from the beginning, is this on? Yeah. From the beginning of this campaign until now, I discovered something about the office of moderator that I didn't know and something else that I now really appreciate. I was very surprised to learn that many town meeting reps have no appreciation or knowledge of what the moderator's duties, responsibilities, and authority should be. Many reps are unfamiliar with the charter, the town bylaws, and rules that govern or limit their own behavior, much less the moderator's. This is disturbing because only chaos can result from such nonconformance. This was a major topic of discussion at the moderator's advisory rules weekly meetings, which were open to the public. The committee was in total agreement with my observation. It was as disturbing to them as it is to me. What I really appreciate is how the committee worked well together and came up with a set of mutually acceptable recommendations and a plan to educate town meeting reps aided by a new town meeting handbook. All in all, I am pleased that the advisory committee has taken a proactive role in this regard, and I look forward to their role as an oversight committee in the future. Also, along the campaign trail, I have pleasantly learned that many reps appreciate my efforts to modernize town meeting and support my efforts to do so. What the voters really want in a moderator is someone who has no political agenda and who will moderate fairly with no perceived bias on any issue. They feel that this is the most important quality for a moderator, and I totally agree.
Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen in the audience here, we have some cards out on the tables where you can pen a question that you might like the moderators, in my case, me to read and ask the two gentlemen running for moderator. We'll also have a similar thing when we do the selectmen. So if you have any questions you'd like to write them down, and I think I have some Boy Scouts in the back that could pick them up, and the boys would be happy to watch for your questions. Just wave at them. I have some questions for the moderators, and I know that we've had a couple of debates, so you've probably asked and answered plenty of them. But I think there are things in here that are worthy of mention, and I'll reserve the right to be a little more provocative because Republicans do that sort of thing, and it'll be my first chance to talk back to a moderator. John, if you wouldn't mind first, what quality do you believe is the most important in running town meeting, and why? Is it independence, neutrality, town knowledge of issues, control, or what?
Well, I think that the most important quality is understanding and listening. It's important for the town meeting reps and the moderator to have a mutual respect. And if the moderator is listening to what the reps are saying and paying attention and treats them with respect, I think that we can get a lot more done on town meeting. As Dick has pointed out, at times it is a challenging position, but I think that if you have the right attitude and they know that you're listening to them and that you respect them, town meeting can run smoothly, efficiently, and we can get a lot done. So, I mean, there's a lot of different qualities, but I think listening is a very important one.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. DeFreitas?
Well, I got my listening skills from being a host of the hot seat many years ago. I think the most important quality is total political neutrality. You have to be totally unbiased. You have to be perceived as being unbiased, and then you have to really be unbiased. Listening is very important, and applying the rules fairly is very important. Maintaining balance so that all sides of an issue are heard is very important. Maintaining transparency is very important, and preserving accountability is very important.
Thank you. And I think I'll start on this side and work back again. And can I say Richard or Dick? Which would you prefer?
Pick one, but stick to it.
Okay. Dick, what strength or weakness do you have to bring to the town moderator position? Strength or weakness?
Strength or weakness? I think my strength is that I have no political leanings one way or another. I don't think there's anyone that can pick up anything that I've done in the last 10 years that shows my politics, and certainly not since I've been moderator. That's been the strength. I have also been very fair. For instance, when there's citizens petition, I'll say this petitioner should have the same rights, privileges, and respect as any other petitioner from the administration. And I stick to that. I don't care who it is. That's a strength. Weakness, I made some changes, and there were times when I should have prepared the town meeting members for the changes. But I tried to keep the question and answer period controllable, and I tried, again, to maintain that fairness.
Thank you. And John?
I think my strength is that I can be respectful to people and that I understand people. I'm also nonpartisan. Certainly, I cannot imagine a situation at town meeting where any personal political beliefs that I might have would be introduced into a debate. To be honest with you, the moderator basically introduces the town meeting articles, calls for a vote, allows debate, but there's no manner in which my personal beliefs, which I, again, kept intact for 8 years on the Finance Committee, nobody knew what my political beliefs were. So when I read in the paper that people are saying that I have an agenda, I don't know what they're talking about. My job would be to run an efficient, effective town meeting, and I think that my ability to be respectful is very important.
Thank you. I have been taking questions from the audience too, and I have a couple up here, so I'd like to pick one of those. And I'll start with John this time and work my way back. John, is there something that has gone on in the last 3 years that you didn't like, and what would you change and why?
Well, there have been more than just a few instances where the town meeting reps, as diligent as they are in trying to pay attention, were not aware of what they were voting on. There was some chaos at the front where we didn't know whether we were voting on a warrant article, an amendment to the warrant article, an amendment to the amendment of the warrant article. And it's discouraging because we have an audience of citizens in Chelmsford who expect town meeting reps to always know what's going on. And I think that starts at the top. So you have to listen, you have to pay attention, and when you do that, I think we can avoid that confusion that has happened more than it had in the prior administration.
Thank you. And Dick, if there was something in the last 3 years that you would change, what would that be and why?
Well, we are the only town that has a separate question and answer period, the only one. Most towns have the questions mixed in with a debate. And questions are supposed to be to gather information only. But there's a persistence, if you will, to use the question and answer period to express your feelings and actually posture your position instead of just asking a question for information. That has to be brought under control. I had it under control, and then at one point, a group of reps came to me and said, gee, why do we have to go through the moderator when we ask questions? I said, you know, maybe we'll try not going through the moderator and see if it saves time. And we didn't go through the moderator. It went directly from the questioner to the petitioner, and what happened is it became very, very confrontational. The Moderators Committee has suggested getting rid of that going direct, and I agree.
Thank you. Now I've lost my place. The attention span of two is difficult. Let me see, let's see. I'll ask this question to each. A lot of folks, we talk about educating town meeting, and the moderator becomes an educator of sorts, as we've learned in the Marcom committee. We've heard about the FinCom committee. How do you operate, John? How would you operate and manage the FinCom committee, and who do you work with in the town office? And along those lines, there's been critiques of the current FinCom committee, or maybe a comment that we needed different people possibly available on that committee. Can you comment on that?
Well, first of all, when I served on the Finance Committee for 8 years, Dennis McHugh, who was the moderator at that time, appointed me and appointed everyone who was on the Finance Committee. He never showed up at any of the committee meetings. And I would do the same thing. The Finance Committee should be totally independent. It should be totally nonpartisan. If I were elected and I were going to interview someone who was interested in joining the Finance Committee, I would not ask them their position on issues that may come before the Finance Committee. I wouldn't ask them, well, are you in favor of full-day kindergarten? I wouldn't ask them whether they're in favor of tax relief or whatever it may be. They're going to have a specific skill set. You appoint them, and you let them do their job. I would not interfere, and as far as having contacts with Town Hall is not part of that process.
Thank you. And Dick?
As you can see, in the last 3 years, I've had to make 7 appointments to FinCom, which is unusual, but there were a lot of people either retiring or moving, and there were a lot of positions open. I have a system where they have to fill an application, submit a resume, and write a cover letter as to what they will bring to the party. Now, what they will bring is in terms of skill, not in terms of any particular issue. And I tell them point blank, once you're appointed, I have nothing to do with the Finance Committee, absolutely nothing. And if you go back over the 3 years, I have not interfered. I have not made any positions of mine, of which I have none anyway, known to FinCom. And I only lost 1 out of the 7 because she was the chairman at the time, and she was appointed town administrator of the town of Shirley, which says a lot for her character and qualifications. And she wasn't allowed to, quote, dance at 2 weddings. She couldn't stay on the FinCom and be town administrator of Shirley.
Okay. And now I'm gonna give myself the authority to go a little provocative here, and it'll seem a little strange at first. Let me preface my question. Affordable housing, Chapter 40B, doesn't seem like a good question to ask a couple folks running for moderator, but let me preface that. We have in town a percentage of property that needs to be affordable by state law. And there's, I'll call it, to be provocative, there's a 40B development in town going in that it has a Burlington-like portion to it, maybe something on the order of 108 to 240 rental units at the intersection of Route 129 and Mill Road. And this property might come to town meeting in our 40B discussion. And I go back to a discussion that we had at town meeting about putting a property similar to that over on Littleton Road. And my question, if you were elected as moderator, obviously you have no authority to discourage the town administrators to come in and have a warrant article where they talked about the relative benefits or problems associated with such a project. But what if during the presentation a town meeting rep or a resident wanted to get up and have a counter presentation to this development, similar to the 110 project or this Mill Road project? How would you proceed, and what procedures or bylaws would you call into place now that a precedence has been set with our grinder pump issue where someone kind of had a counter presentation? As town moderator, you'd have to control that.
Well,
How would you proceed?
On the question of 40B, that's totally political. Moderators have nothing to do with that. So there's no comment on the 40B thing.
Okay.
As far as a counter-proposal, for instance, if a citizen makes a petition and the administration does not agree with the petition, the administration cannot answer the questions for the person that's proposing, the citizen that's proposing the article. The moderator, the administration is going to have to get in line like everybody else to in a debate section. They can't ask questions, and they get in there like everybody else. What happened with the grinder pump issue is the town manager was answering questions when it wasn't his article, and a town meeting rep, who shall remain nameless, made a point of order that said, why is he answering questions? It's not his article. And I said, point's well taken. Mr. Manager, you have to sit down. I gave him some rebuttal time at the end, and then I gave the presenter rebuttal time on his rebuttal time to keep it fair.
And John, did you get enough of that, my long diatribe there?
Yes, I was listening very closely.
Thank you.
The-
How would you proceed?
Well, first of all, the 40B that was enacted or was involved in town meeting the last time was actually one which involved the appropriation of municipal funds, bonding and things, which the Mill Road one or some other private ones wouldn't be coming before town meeting. But as a practical matter, should such a situation present itself, I think that we have a procedure where there can be debate. And if people are opposed to a warrant article or a project, they address it in debate. And that's the way that town meetings should be run. As far as personally, if I'm a moderator, no one will know how I feel about it. Whether I'm in favor or against it, doesn't matter, okay? But I would treat everybody fairly and give everybody an opportunity to present their arguments. And that's 40B.
Thank you. I'd like to, at this point, have the candidates ask a question to the other candidate, and I'll preface that by saying that you're going to ask a question, the respondent will answer the question, and if I think it's appropriate, I may let you have a follow-on, but I don't want to get that out of control. So I'll give a 15-second follow-on if I decided that that's a good thing to do.
Is the follow-on a question or a comment?
No, if you ask a question, he'll answer the question. That may charge you up to want to respond to the answer.
Okay.
That's all. Okay? John, could you ask a question of Dick, please?
Almost certainly I can. In the last debate, you suggested that despite the fact that we've had electronic voting for 2.5 years, a reason why there are so few candidates running for town meeting representative is because they don't want to be accountable for their votes now that they are publicly available. While this is something I've never thought of, no representatives or former reps I have discussed this with have ever heard such a reason. What facts do you have to support such a suggestion?
I don't have any facts. I never said that was the reason. I said possibly that could be a reason. Now, in fact, in my own campaign committee, I have two people that are not running for re-election. They've been around for over 20 years, and they've served their time. And there are quite a few seasoned representatives that have been around that long, and they've served their time, and they think you should bring in new blood. We're not the only town that's suffering this malady, if you will.
John, would you like to respond?
Well, just to the fact that, very quickly, the number that we have not had run this time is unprecedented. We've always had certain precincts that are a little thin, but many precincts we've had considerably more candidates than positions.
Thank you. And Dick, could you ask a question? John, please.
Yes, John, you are running for town moderator, townwide, and you are also running as a precinct rep in Precinct 1. If you win both seats, do you expect you're going to be able to vote from the podium, or are you just hedging your bet?
I'm definitely hedging my bets. I respect you as a candidate, Dick, and I want to serve the town in any capacity that they will allow me. So clearly, if I was elected moderator, I would step down and make a position open for someone else who wants the job. It's just it's the same way that we see politicians on the national level who may be sitting as a United States representative and they're running for the United States Senate. They don't have to step down as a rep until they win the Senate. It's the same type of theory. But I want to serve the town, and I'm going to do it any way that I feel the town is willing to allow me to do it.
Thank you. Do you have a response?
So just a correction. If they're running for Senate, and they have to be running for rep at the same time, they're not just holding their office. This is not a place where you're holding your office. This is a concerted effort to win as a precinct rep and a concerted effort to win as town moderator. And just for the record, Town Meeting Times Handbook strictly forbids the moderator from voting or being a town meeting rep.
Thank you. We have a couple members of the press, and we actually gave them a microphone this time. Would you like to ask a question of the candidates? Could you please identify yourself and your paper? And if you want to give out subscription information, that's fine with me. I'm in the printing business.
Thank you, Grant Welker from The Sun. Is there anything you would change about the speed of town meeting? There have been a lot of votes that are nearly unanimous, but yet it'll get bogged down in question and answer. And as you said, sometimes it's more people are asking a question to prove a point. Is there anything you would change about the speed, make it quicker, or is it fine the way it is?
Well, that was brought up at the Moderators Advisory Committee meeting, and one of their recommendations is to group articles in a consent agenda. So like articles can be voted in a consent agenda, and if there are 4 or 5 things in a consent agenda, and one of them is a rep field should be pulled out, they have the right to say, I want to pull out number 4. But by voting in a consent agenda, you'll be able to pass 3 or 4 articles at the same time. And there are a lot of those that come up in the fall that are routine articles like money for the graves and money for certain small amounts, certain departments. That will speed it up.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I agree with the consent agenda proposal from Marcom. I also think that you can do some things as the moderator to expedite the process. For example, with a 1 microphone situation that it looks like we're going to be having, when people queue up to address whether they're in favor of or opposed to a warrant article, if you see 6 or 7 people who are all saying, we're in favor, we're in favor, we're in favor, I think the moderator can say, listen, we're hearing a lot of people in favor. If there's someone opposed, let's hear from the person opposed. If no one is opposed, then I would respectfully suggest that perhaps if there's no opposition, we call a vote on the matter, because it appears as though there's no argument against.
Thank you. Molly, could you identify yourself and your newspaper?
Molly Lockman with the Chelmsford Independent. I know you have been speaking a lot about MARCOM, and I wonder what you would plan for long-term oversight, whether you'd keep a committee like that, or how would you regulate long-term oversight?
And Dick, could you answer that first, please?
I definitely plan to keep the Moderator's Advisory Committee as an oversight committee so that we can never drift away from where we think we are. We hadn't had a Rules Committee meeting in 22 years. By having it as an oversight committee, any problems that come up procedurally can be addressed right after each town meeting. So I definitely plan to have them as an oversight committee, and I would use them also as a committee to vet whatever changes that I might suggest or somebody else might suggest. Working with MARCOM, I developed a respect for these members, and I think they developed a respect for me after working together for about 12 weeks. They know that I know the rules, and I know what the reasons are behind all their recommendations because I sat through it. Thank you.
Thank you. And John?
Thank you. I'm not so certain that I agree that we need to have a standing committee all the time. We have so many volunteers who give so much of their time, and I know that Mr. Latina and several other members of MARCOM are also committee members on other committees. If the situation should manifest itself that I think that a committee should be convened, then I would do something like that. But as a practical matter, we went 22 years without problems. 19 of those years, we really had a very efficient running town meeting, and there was really no need for a committee to review the process. And I would have to see what happens, but I would hope that people would approach me and say, listen, I think that you're doing something wrong, or I disagree with something that a decision you've made, and we would discuss it, and hopefully I could use that in the future without the necessity of convening an entire committee.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions? Good. I'm gonna do this moderator job is very powerful. I can kind of do whatever I want because I have the microphone. I'm gonna give you a little commercial. Two things. One is over here on the table. On the table here we have people that would like you to sign their nomination papers so they can run for various offices in the state and represent you. Very often these are volunteer positions. Sometimes they're lightly paid, but the extent of those jobs up there decides what your tax rates are and how the government at our state spends your money. They don't actually generate any money, or they call it revenues. That's your money and they're spending it. So if you wouldn't mind, pass by the table this evening, sign someone's nomination papers, pay attention to them, and call them. Your representatives in the local offices don't hear from us enough. I have the White House, I have my senators, I have my state reps, I have my congressmen on my cell phone. And when something comes up, I do talk to their administrative person, but I get my message out to them and I feel better about it, and I think it does make a difference. So please sign nomination papers and get your representatives listening to you. Second part of the commercial is we have a ballot. There are 9 precincts in Chelmsford, and there's a section on the far side here that's missing a whole lot of names. And there was some comment about town meeting rep being 2 positions, running for moderator and town meeting rep. And I have to be honest with you, I stopped by the town hall when I was appalled at the number of people not signing up to be town meeting rep, and asked the clerk if I could sign up to be a town meeting rep. Well, as most of you know in this room, I'm already a town meeting rep. And she was kind of struck, and I said, is there anything that says I can't be a super town meeting rep? In other words, get 2 clickers, vote twice. The concept was to end up on the front page of these 2 newspapers, having the town clerk being very upset with me and having my name on the ballot and her refusing to swear me in. My point was simply, I would withdraw at the end of that, but my point was, if you are interested in supporting your town and deciding how the money that you're spending every day that goes down there is being spent, town meeting does that, then you need to run for town meeting rep. And it's as simple as writing your name on the ballot and having a couple more people write their name on the ballot. You figure out your precinct, you trot down to town hall, it's not too late. You can't pull papers now, but you can certainly have a write-in ballot. And that's going to decide, in my case, I think there are 5 positions or 4 positions in the precinct 4 that I'm in that are going to be decided by somebody writing 2 or 3 names down. That's all it takes. So if you're even close to thinking about spending a couple of nights with a bunch of really neat people down at the town meeting with one of these gentlemen standing on the stage, please write your name in on the ballot and ask a couple of neighbors and friends to do the same. Thank you. That's my commercial. Gentlemen, there are 162 town meeting reps. I think this year there might be less unless some of these folks write their names in. You have to control them to some degree, but at the same time, you have to recognize that they're humans and they think that they're the only ones standing there at the mic, and you're looking at it, I think someone said 162 people and people sitting behind the chain. We're all human and we make mistakes. When you make a procedural mistake, and John, assuming you're in that position, you make a procedural mistake, it's not a lawyer's position, it's a personal one-on-one with me when I'm standing at that microphone, and you're corrected. How do you plan to accept the challenge of that mistake? How do you keep it non-political, impersonal? How do you adjust that? Do you call me later and say, oops, I read?
Well, no, I actually would apologize publicly. We had a situation when I was a selectman in which we had a dog case, and if you know anything about dog cases, they are very contentious and they're very difficult. And the fact pattern was that there were 2 huskies who were running around a neighborhood and they bit someone. And the witnesses, some were pretty sure they were the dogs and other people weren't too sure. But my sense and the sense of the other selectmen were, what are the odds that you would have 2 sets of huskies running around a neighborhood, and we basically engaged in some discipline in which the dogs had to be restrained. It turns out a few weeks later, there were 2 other dogs in the same neighborhood. They were both huskies, and it came before us, and we realized that we had made a mistake, and I publicly apologized to the first family for my vote in disciplining the dogs because their dogs were not the dogs. So I make mistakes, and I'll own up to it.
Thank you. And Dick?
I'm so glad to hear that you've had to apologize for something because you berated me for making a mistake and apologizing publicly for it. What was the whole question?
We're all human and we make mistakes. Sometimes a procedural mistake. How would you remedy that? Would you call me later, or would you do it right then and there?
If I made a procedural mistake and town council would point out to me that I was in error, I would absolutely try to correct it right there at that time. I have no resistance to admitting I made a mistake and correcting it. I will say, for the record, though, I've only been overturned by town council one time, and guess what? She was wrong. She tried to overturn me. I recognized a 2/3 majority, and she was going by the old rule, and she said, you can't do that. And I said, yes, I can. And then 30 seconds later, she says, you're right, you can, because she looked up the new bylaw. So, but I have no compunction whatsoever to not admit a mistake. My biggest fear is that I will make a mistake and everybody will buy into it, and later on, somebody decides it was the wrong thing to do.
Thank you.
Brian, can I
John,
respond?
you look like you have a comment.
I do. Thank you very much.
Please go ahead.
I think there's a gross difference between making a procedural mistake and for publicly dressing down a volunteer in town without good cause that would require an apology. That is why, that was my comment. It has nothing to do with making a procedural mistake. It's a situation where you're disrespecting a volunteer in town who made an innocent mistake. That's all I have to say.
You will notice that I apologized rather quickly That was a very frustrating night. There were many things happening, and she just happened to be in the beam of my frustration, and I apologized very, very, very quickly.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. We talked a little about this. I got a question from the audience again on it, and it does go to a point. And I'll ask John first. How can we better educate the town meeting reps in the future? And then I'll preface that. Maybe you can answer that, the second part of that, or Dick. What do we do now to educate the town meeting reps? John, could you start?
Well, actually, Chelmsford is the only town in the Commonwealth in which the town manager conducts what we call pre-town meeting. The purpose of pre-town meeting is to, it's supposed to benefit the newer town meeting reps, but a number of veterans appear as well. And the town manager basically gives the town meeting reps an overview of what's going to be on the warrant that evening, or that town meeting. Dick has, and I agree with this completely, he has done a presentation, and I would do the same thing, in which you explain the process at that pre-town meeting. There's a handout that explains a number of the procedural things. That's a good thing, and that's one way that you can help them understand what the process is.
Thank you. And Dick?
I plan to have a How to Be Effective at Town Meeting seminar the week before the pre-town meeting. Probably have it in this room. I did that my beginning of my second year, and it worked out quite well. But I think that by itself is not enough. The committee, to advise the moderator, plans to put out a handbook which will have all of the rules, and I will invite them to participate with me to go over the new recommendations, and possibly we'd have the handbook by then.
Okay, so you'll actually have a handbook available to town meeting reps?
Well,
as
that's
part
going to
of-
depend on you guys.
Okay. And this one's a little unclear to me, but I'll read it as written. Have either of you contacted other town meeting reps for the do's and don'ts? And I'm gonna add a little sidebar in there. Town meeting reps in our town, other towns, other moderators, have you done some homework? Have you contacted folks and said, hey, how should we do this? And John, if you don't mind.
Oh, I go first again. That's fine. Well, I've spoken extensively with Dennis McHugh about this, because I really think he, as a 30-year veteran of the process, and one who is most familiar with the idiosyncrasies that are Chelmsford, is the best source of information. And he's been very helpful and very instructive. I've also spoken with numerous town meeting reps in Chelmsford, because as Dick points out, other towns run things differently, and I want things in Chelmsford to run very well. And I think that there's a manner in which you can do things in which you help the process, but you don't step on anyone's toes, and you don't get angry at anyone. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from Chelmsford town meeting reps from across the board, not just one faction or anything like that, who have given me their thoughts about how I could best serve.
Thank you. And Dick?
Lately, I've been getting more feedback from town meeting reps than I had in the beginning, and they seem to approve of me trying to keep town meeting in the 21st century. I spend a lot of time talking to town moderator from Billerica, town moderator from Brookline, and the town moderator from Westford. In fact, before I became the moderator, I went to the Westford town meeting, Billerica town meeting, the Drake town meeting, and Sandy Gadsby from Brookline came to our town meeting to witness electronic voting. So I've been in contact. Plus, I'm a member of the Massachusetts Moderators Association, and when you get down there, I've had big dialogues with these people, and come to find out, after talking to them, we're the only people that had this question and answer period, and they can't figure out why we have this.
Okay. And John,
Oh, I can respond? Thank you.
a
Well,
quick one.
Very quickly, I actually like the question and answer period because it provides information that may advance the debate afterwards. I don't like when there's a debate initially and then all of a sudden people ask questions and people who may have been debating may change their mind as a result of some of the answers. So I actually like that process. But I can't be a member of the Massachusetts Municipal Moderators until I become a moderator. So I'm just, that's the
Thank
way
you.
it goes.
Thank you. And I have a, it's not a question but a comment, but I'm going to challenge the two of you. Dick, you first. The older town meeting reps have done their work, and a lot of them, we've seen this past year, have decided to step aside. There may be an apathy in town with the younger people, or maybe some of them don't want to be involved or don't have the time to be involved. This is an opportunity of you two gentlemen to possibly convince the folks in this room or the folks watching on the TV to become a town meeting rep. Dick, would you try to convince somebody that's thinking about it that it's not a difficult job, and maybe ask them to write their name on the ballot?
I'm not going to say it's not a difficult job, but anyone who is not a town meeting rep that is concerned about where the town is going should be a town meeting rep. The reason I say it's not difficult, because if you've done your due diligence, you will walk into that hall totally prepared to vote or at least discuss most articles. What's happening is some people show up and they're totally unprepared. I would say there's probably, I think I'm being generous, 60% of the reps that are prepared. And so please get involved. Not only will it make you a better citizen of the town of Chelmsford, but you'll have a better feeling about the whole process. And you might get appointed to the Finance Committee, or you might become a selectman, or you might run for school committee. So by getting involved, you will advance through the system, and I totally encourage it.
Thank you. John?
Thank you. I would strongly recommend anyone who has any interest in government to apply or run for town meeting rep, especially this year where there's a number of precincts that are don't have the requisite number of candidates. Town meeting is the legislative branch of our government, and it is the branch that is solely responsible for the budget. So when you're worried about taxes and when you're worried about how your money is being spent, it's not the selectmen, it's not the planning board, it's not the zoning board of appeals. It is town meeting who votes the budget. And if you want to be heard on budgetary issues, that is the board you should be, the committee, it's not really a committee, that you should be running for town meeting rep. So it's also a very good opportunity for you to meet people in town and network with people who understand the history of the town, especially if you're new. So I would encourage anyone who has any interest to please run for town meeting rep.
Thank you very much. We've come to the point, yes, ma'am?
I have a question for you. Does someone have a list of the different precincts and how many vacancies there are on each precinct?
I love that list. And I'll go to my commercial again. The town clerk down at the town office is the key person that will, she's an absolutely wonderful person. You go in there and visit with Honorina. She can give you that information. It's online. You can actually look and see who's running and find one of those folks and say, hey, I'd like to be on that list as well. In addition, there's a green card down at the town hall in the stairwell that shows all the 9 precincts on the wall, and you can see who's already on that ballot. That is your key to your little area of the town, 9 precincts in town. Go down there and find out what precinct you're in. And I'll give you a little hint. One of my state reps, I caught him on the way out of the selectmen meeting, and he said, "Oh, you live in my precinct." And I said, with all due respect, Mr. Representative, you live in my district. This is my town. he works for me. And we corrected that, and he was very happy. He's actually going to come to a school where I'm on the board of directors at as a result of that conversation. We're at the point where I'd like to have a closing statement, and I made a little mistake. Believe it or not, people make mistakes. There were actually two different closing elements on your paper. I'd like to keep it to 1 minute out of respect for my selectmen that are coming up at 8. So let's see, I had John start many times first. Dick, would you mind starting? Closing statement, 1 minute, please.
Not at all. I wish to thank the Chelmsford Republican Town Committee for sponsoring this debate. I also thank each of you here in attendance and those of you watching on TV. And I want to thank John for running. Being moderator is a great responsibility, and I take the role very seriously. The moderator controls the tempo of town meeting. He must be impartial and not have any political agenda of his own. He must also have no public opinion nor perceived notions on any issue that come before town meeting. He must be knowledgeable of the warrant articles that come before town meeting, and he must be impartial to all presenters. He must respect the decision of the town meeting members. I'm running for a second term because I love this job and the challenges it represents. I work hard to prepare myself for each meeting. I know the charter, the bylaws, rules, and a procedural handbook. I enjoy serving Chelmsford in this capacity. I have endeavored to be an effective moderator and would gratefully appreciate the opportunity to serve Chelmsford residents for another 3 years. I respectfully ask for your support and your vote on April 1st. I am Richard DeFreitas, Town Moderator, #1 on the ballot, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. John?
Thank you, Republican Town Committee, for holding this debate, and thank you, Brian Latina, for moderating, Dick, for being here in the audience. We've now had 3 debates with 1 more left. It will soon be time for you to make your choice. If you are happy with the current moderator and the manner in which he's conducted town meeting for the last 3 years, you might make that choice. However, if you would like to see respectful, efficient, calm, and effective town meetings restored to Chelmsford, I hope you will vote for me, John Kurland. I am running for moderator because I love Chelmsford and the way people work so well with each other to solve our challenges and improve our town. I want to continue to give back to Chelmsford. If you have not watched town meeting or have seen the conflicts over the past 3 years, please call some of your 18 town meeting reps, get their input, and then judge for yourself. When finishing my term as selectman last year, I promised I would find some way to serve the citizens of Chelmsford. As your next town moderator, you will see town meetings greatly improved and town meeting reps respected by the moderator for the work they do. If elected, I will make you another promise. I will prove myself worthy of your trust. I kindly ask for your vote. John Kurland for moderator, April 1st. I won't let you down.
Thank you very much. And if I could editorialize for a moment here, maybe Chelmsford could, not only, in addition to having the one strange artifact of having the only town with a question and answer period, maybe we should have 2 moderators. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you, Dick.
We'll have the selectmen candidates up in a couple of minutes. You can take a little bit of a break here. just doing that in the downtown areas of our little towns in this part of the world. I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize one of the gentlemen in the room, a current Board of Selectmen member for the last 3 years, and I guess we could say you're retiring, Mr. Lane. Jim Lane, would you mind standing up and be recognized? Thank you, thank you. Selectman is a tough job. I had the great honor to watch on TV anyway. Dennis Reddy's plaque in the Board of Selectmen, outside the Board of Selectmen room. And I remember reading a newspaper article, and Dennis had been a selectman for many years, and the article talked about when he finally won, the first call he got at home was somebody saying, "Are you the guy in charge of potholes?" So sometimes those calls come in, I have no doubt, and a lot of times you're up there and there's nobody else in the room, and I just wanted to publicly recognize you and thank you for your 3 years. Appreciate that. Okay. We have 2 folks running for a single seat Board of Selectmen. We have Mr. Joyce, Bob Joyce, and Joe Reddy. I'm going to read a couple of bios as we did before, kind of to get them calmed down. It's nerve-wracking to be in front of this scary group. I'll start with Joe. Joe Reddy is a third-generation resident immersed in the Chelmsford community. He believes in leading by doing. Joe's an independent small business owner and a community leader and a father. Joe and his wife Amy, a registered nurse, have 2 beautiful children. His unique local experience brings the know-how and understanding to successfully tackle the tough challenges facing Chelmsford today in the future. Joe is actively involved in the Chelmsford Business Association, and he volunteers his time as a member of the Chelmsford Rotary and serves as vice chairman of the Economic Development Commission. And he serves as town meeting representative as well. Joe will provide the fiscal leadership and tax relief that our citizens need while working to improve our schools and maintain a level service budget. His top priority is to achieve excellence in our schools and deliver the services residents deserve while further driving overall tax relief. Joe asks for your vote on April 1st. And Bob Joyce, Robert P. Bob Joyce, is a candidate for the election to the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen. As a 38-year resident in Chelmsford, Bob currently serves on the planning board, as he has done so since year 2004. Bob served on the Board of Selectmen from 1993 to 96, Neshoba Valley Technical School Committee 2001 through 2009, Sewer Commission 1989 to 93, and as a town meeting representative, he has served since 1989. Joyce is employed as, it sounds funny, I'm going to read it my way. Yeah. Bob is employed as an IT team leader at Sonos Networks in Westford. His background also includes owning and managing, formerly owning and managing Photobank 1 Hour Lab in Chelmsford Center from 1982 to 1995. And he was a partner in the former ChelmsfordMassNews.com. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and an Associate of Science in Law Enforcement from the Northeastern University in Boston. He has received an A+ certification from CompTIA, a computer industry-wide organization. He's lived on Turnpike Road for the past 38 years with his wife, Rosemary, and their children, Nelson and Andrea. Thank you. Okay. I gave a statement for the candidates to complete, and Joe, would you mind starting? Read the statement, unless I need to read it?
No, I have it right here.
Okay, and then
prepared.
complete that statement, please.
I was given the statement of, from the beginning of this campaign until now, I discovered something about the Office of Selectmen that I didn't know, and something else that I now really appreciate. And it gave me a moment of reflection. From the beginning of this campaign till now, I discovered that the voters I've engaged in discussions with believe that the powers entrusted to the Board of Selectmen by the Charter are far more expansive than they really are. Issues such as giving back free cash to the taxpayers ultimately rest with town meeting to decide. 40B developments fall under the authority of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Policies adopted by the board are only good if they're upheld by Mass General Law. And now, more than ever, I appreciate the hard work, research, dedication, and collaboration that it takes to enact meaningful change. And I really appreciate all of the hard work Jim Lane did for the residents of Chelmsford as a member of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
Thank you. And I'd just like to say that this is the biggest crowd we've seen at the debate so far this year. So welcome and a good turnout. Okay, from the beginning of this campaign until now, I discovered something about the Office of Selectman that I didn't know, and something else that I now really appreciate. Same question for everybody. Having been a selectman prior to this was a challenging question. What I've discovered was that the town, and specifically the Board of Selectmen, has not pushed the town managers in the past and themselves to do a 5-year strategic plan. This would encompass all areas in town, including the school department, which has already performed this task, but could be integrated in with the town one. The selectmen should take an active role in this process and include this as part of their managers' goals. This should be a combination of all committees within the town, including capital planning, financial planning, master plan, housing plan, and all the other committees who work hard for our town. In the area of things that I really appreciate, I think the biggest thing is technology. In 1991, while I was a sewer commissioner, I was responsible for automating sewer use bills in a time when computers were barely used. Today, we have such reliance on computerization for everything in Town Hall. Selectmen agendas now have links in them so that you can access the same documents that the selectmen are looking at. We have automated our permit process, assessments, and geo-mapping in the engineering department. I look forward in the future for more automation within the town, not for the purpose of elimination of jobs, but to make all our operations super efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Bob, I'm going to start with a question from the audience, and thank you for sending these in. And if you have any others, I think we still have some Boy Scouts in the back that would pick them up. Bob, how do you plan to deal with the retirement benefits that we have in town, recognizing that we have more retirees than employees, I think, at this point?
Yeah,
How do you deal with that?
We do. That's a very sticky issue because some towns are dealing with it and some towns aren't. And there's always the slight possibility that the State House will do something, but you know what it's like waiting for them. I think I'd like to see OPEB distributed among the departments. And the reason I feel this way is because if they have it as a budget line in their budget every year, they can identify how much that is for them, even with the retired people. But in hiring new people, they might want to look at whether they really need a person if they're going to have to pay OPEB benefits, 20 years or 30 years out. So I'd like to see it added as a line item on each department, and each department cover it. And of course, there'd only be a certain amount each year we would do that with. So if we had the money, it would be higher. Thank you.
And Joe, how do you plan to deal with the retirement benefits, considering that we have more retirees than actively working town employees?
Well, my plan would be to start to use put it into the budget. We certainly could use free cash to try to boost the amount of money that we put into OPEB. I'm coming into a situation where I'm the generation that's being tasked with, sticking to a commitment that we made to people years ago. And, I think it's only fair to the people that are retired now that we try to fund that budget item line. And I think it's part of fiscal management to try to make sure that we come up with a solution to make that happen. I thought that the idea of putting OPEB through each department, I thought that was a good idea. I'd like to vet that. I'm always open to good ideas. But more importantly, Chelmsford's been a cornerstone of good fiscal management, and I think we're going to pioneer how this will be taken care of.
Thank you. And Joe, I'll start with you. What's your stance regarding full-day kindergarten, and would you support the request from the school committee for those funds? And I'm going to preface this, add to it myself. Since I'm moderator, I can do that. When my kids were in school, we kind of ran out of money, and we started charging a bus fee and a parking fee and an athletic fee. Now that we came into all this extra money, I don't think we've rescinded those fees, and now we're trying to get more money for the kindergarten program. So how do you deal with those two conflicts?
Well, in my mind, a fee is a tax. I mean, you can call it anything you want, but those are issues that we have to address. We have to look at it from an overall budget standpoint. It goes back to my core values, which is I truly believe that we have to help children at an early age be educated. If we don't put money into their education now, it essentially ends up costing us later on down the road. Nobody wants to see people on EBT cards. They don't want to see them on welfare. And I think that the key to making that happen starts with education. That's the first line of defense. And kids at an early age are just absolute sponges. And if you give them the opportunity to learn and succeed, you're going to have a higher rate of success coming out of Chelmsford, which not only is going to help your property values, but it's just going to be a good thing to do for the next generation.
Okay, and I'm going to use my prerogative as moderator and ask you, how do we fund this, given that I put 5 kids through the school system when I guess we didn't have enough money, and now we're going to spend more money? How do we fund it? Where's that money coming from?
We find it through efficiencies. So, for instance, the GIC, which is the group health insurance, we're going to save another $600,000 a year. Probably this year as a result of those cost savings. Regionalization, trying to take, say, the 911 call center, regionalize that. Energy aggregation. We also did the ESCO for the schools. We just funded $18 million worth of capital projects that we're going to be able to take off the books as a result. And we actually have a lot of capital projects that are going to be major capital projects that are going to be falling off the books in the next several years. So there's going to be funding there, but it's a matter of what are your priorities, and education has always been my top priority.
Thank you. Yes.
Please, allow me a correction if I may. You just talked about another $600,000 of savings on that health plan. My understanding was the health plan, if the town employees went into that health plan from Carl Cohen's lips, that put it in their papers, that we would be saving $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So the employees finally said, okay, we're not losing anything, so we'll go on with it. So I went down to town hall and said, where's that $1 million?
Yep. Let me ask that as a question later on. You can write that as a question for me. Okay. Okay. Well, we're going to ask that as a question. Thank you. Bob, could you respond? I can kind of restart that one.
Yeah, just highlight it again.
Yep. What is your stance regarding full-day kindergarten, and would you support the request from the school committee to do those funds? And then I added a comment about the bus fees and the athletic fees and the parking fees went up when we were short funds, but we haven't addressed that. So maybe there's $1 million in the cost to add a kindergarten program every year, but we're picking up maybe $500,000 in extra fees because we didn't have enough money.
I think it's very important to educate all our children within the town, and I think Chelmsford has a very exceptional school system. And I think that while I would be in favor of a full-day kindergarten, I kind of subscribe to the Paul Cohen method, which says, put it in your budget and cover it. In other words, what are you going to cut to get to it? And our kids are, our kids that are even having a half a day of kindergarten are still probably ahead of the game. Plus, we use the Westland School for a after school and almost like a full day of kindergarten. So that's revenue that we'll lose in that case. But as far as funding it, they'll have to put it in their budget and find what they really want. But we can't have a lopsided budget, and I'll probably discuss that more later. I'm out of time.
Joe, could I have you respond to that and the comment from the audience? And please, if you have comments, write them down so that I can control the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, to this point, I haven't been a selectman, so I'm not necessarily responsible for how they spent that $1 million, but you're asking me where are areas that we can find money, and I'm looking at those cost savings. Now, whether we allocate that towards full-day kindergarten, whether we allocate that towards OPEB or some other line item, that'll be something that's the reason that I'm running for selectman. And not only that, but we'll look at savings and possibly using the seat as a bully pulpit to try to revamp our Chapter 70 laws, maybe get some more state lottery aid for the town.
Thank you. And Bob, would you also
Yeah.
respond, please?
Yeah, I would like to respond to that. The $1 million that the gentleman is talking about went into free cash. You remember that free cash is the cash that's left over, and in the past we've spent it on projects and we've spent it on all kinds of things. Certainly the stabilization fund is now up to a point where it should be, so we don't have to keep putting money in there. But that's where the money went to, free cash, and they used it for other things. And you're absolutely right, sir.
Thank you. Just to look at some of the math that we do in the town, I guess I didn't realize how math worked in town government. I'd heard about Proposition 2.5, but the cost of the fees and all the rest seemed to be more than 2.5. And then this year, and I'd like you to comment, listen carefully because I'll go into a little detail like Brian does at town meeting. Okay. We're increasing our taxes, our budget this year to 2.8%. Well, if my math serves me, Prop 2.5 was to allow our budget to go up 2.5%. Well, there's a whole lot more money in that 2.8%. Where does it come from? That's the first part of the question. And the second part is that at town meeting, when we pass a budget and we select an amount and more money comes in, and I'm going to use a little bit of my discretion here. I have a $3 bill. That's my Prop 2.5 money, and I give it to the town, and then I give them another $1.50 because we have CPA funds, another $1.50, and I buy a car, so I give them $2. So now they got $2, and I accidentally give them all $6. Now the portion of that that's free cash is what in that scenario? Maybe $1 is free cash. In other words, I gave them too much money. So, Joe, if I gave you too much money, what's the best use of that extra dollar that I threw at the town? How would you deal with that?
Well, the best use would be to take it and probably either save it or put it towards some other investment that we need in the community. So it could be education, could be paying down our liabilities like OPEB, or if we feel like we need to give it back to the taxpayer, I'm all for that.
And Bob, if I give you $6 and you only budgeted for $5, where should that extra dollar go? What's your first gut reaction? Where should that go? And I'm going to come back to you, Joe, about the 2.5% versus 2.8.
Well, I would say that if I was going to keep it, not return the whole dollar to the taxpayer, I would certainly put half of it as a deterrent to the increasing the tax. 50% of, this is free cash. This is what's called free cash. It's extra money that the taxpayers have paid. And it doesn't belong to the selectmen, it doesn't belong to the manager, it belongs to the taxpayers. So I guess if we were going to keep it, then I would subscribe to the fact that we should give 50% of it back to the taxpayer in the form of adjustment to their taxes. And then maybe take the other 50%, and if there's something that absolutely has to be taken care of, then put it to that course. Maybe it would go into stabilization if we needed to beef up the stabilization. But I wouldn't give the other 50% to a project, building a new building. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm trying to figure out how to tear one of those in half and give them each 50%. On alternate, I'm sorry, Joe, I was going to come back to you and ask on the fuzzy math that is town budgets. 2.5, Prop 2.5 arguably allows the town to raise taxes every year another 2.5%. How could I get to 2.8% in this increasing budget? Where does that come from?
Yeah, my understanding is it comes from, basically increasing the levy limit. And basically you're taking the new levy limit that's been approved by the state and then comparing it to the prior year.
Okay. Bob, do you have a comment on that 2.5 to 2.8?
The 2.5 is dictated by Proposition 2.5. That's why it's called 2.5. And when you have over and above the 2.5%, then you have to take it from somewhere. And sometimes we take it from free cash, sometimes we take it from stabilization. But the biggest thing is, and this is why this manager is very pro-development within town, is new growth. Every year we have a portion of new growth that we can add to the 2.5% and make it 2.75 if we have to.
Okay, thank you. New growth. So new growth is one way that we can put more money in the coffers. And to get new growth in a town that we've heard is built out, developers might come in and want to build in town. It seems to me that we have an affordable housing project that allows the builders to come in and build in property that the town, the planners would never allow. How do we as selectmen, how would a selectman deal with that state law that allows them to come in? That's my number one question. And the second question is, one of the target areas is the road that you two gentlemen live on Turnpike Road. In our affordable building project, and I live just down the street from that, I didn't recognize that they put a 120-unit planned build possibly on that street. How do you deal with that on your own street? 120 units, 4-story buildings, 3 of them perhaps, at Warren and Turnpike Avenue, if that were to come to fruition. So,
First.
Bob, would you please
Yeah.
start?
Well, that particular piece of property that you're talking about is directly across from my house. So I think what the Board of Selectmen can do is support housing that is done through the Housing Authority, because that becomes 100% towards our goal, which we're not that many units short of. So Joe won't have a problem with it because he lives at the other end. They're not going to build any affordable housing down there unless they add on to the bank or the credit union. But anyway, so yeah, I would try to make it a friendly 40B through the Board of Selectmen, and I would always go with the Housing Authority to be our developer over these outside contractors that are just, they're just in it for the buck. And even though there are constraints on making a lot of money, they find ways around it, so they make even more money. Thank you.
And Joe, this development that I referred to is just up the street from you, but when your kids are out in the front yard playing, The Mill Road project, for example, estimated that there'd be another 1,000 cars driving on Mill Road from the 7,000 a day that drive there now. And they didn't think that was a big deal. But if your kids are out in the front yard playing on Turnpike Road and this development goes in, again, selectmen don't have a lot of control of that. What would you do? What is the 40B approach?
Well, I would care if it was built on Turnpike Road, just like any other resident. But I think you have to look at 40B as first of all, no one really likes 40B because it's in my mind a broken law that allows projects to be bypass the local planning process. And I think we have a planning board for a reason because projects should make sense. But the truth is that we have a limited scope in what we can do. I think you need to rally residents and try to get them to the Zoning Board of Appeals meetings. Particularly the project over on Mill Road, I'm not excited about it for the exact reason is that it creates zoning creep. I don't like to see residential homes in an industrial area, and I don't like to see industrial areas creeping into residential areas. So, that's something that, should be looked at. But certainly the affordable housing stock, we're getting very close. And, as long as we plan appropriately, I'm hoping that we can basically put a stop to 40B.
Thank you. Joe, I'll go to you on alternative energy. Last year, the town meeting approved to borrow towards an $18 million redesign, rebuild of our electrical systems, lights, primarily street lights, 2,223 of them. I checked the contract. That's one of the town meeting things I like to do. And they looked at installing a new power source, yet we only had one electrician in town. The vote looked to replace the street lights, and it allowed a contractor to come in, Solarize Mass, to come in and frankly target some of our residents to try to put a solar panel on their roof, convincing them that it would be free or they'd get some money back. And then this latest budget, and I know you guys are right up on the budgets, and this is kind of the question. The town manager added an energy manager, not an electrician, but an energy manager to manage this $18 million that we voted on. And he said it's $53,000 a year. Well, I did my math. If you figure 50% pay because you don't want to worry about the OPIV number, so you're going to keep him for 20 years, about the life of that $18 million project. That's another $2.09 million added to that project like it was nothing. Could you comment on adding an energy manager where in the past we didn't need one because we were using non-alternative energy, I guess?
I really wouldn't be in favor of it. My understanding is that Johnson Controls is going to take over that project as far as the ESCO goes. So I think the project itself was a fantastic idea. Look, we took a ton of projects off of our capital budget. It's things that we no longer have to, put into future expenditures. So right there, you've just saved the town $18 million and using the same level of energy that you're using before. And then as far as the Solarize Mass program, I'm actually participating in that as well. I'm one of the residents that had them come out, take a look at my house. Truthfully, it's only affordable because of the government, tax credits that are given. But I do think that there is some offset, carbon offsets and other efficiencies as a result. So I'm interested in taking part in that project.
Thank you. And Bob, I don't know if I need to restate that.
No.
Thank you.
There's a lot more included in that project that we voted on at town meeting. It's not only lights and street lights, it's furnaces, infrastructures inside of buildings that are being replaced. The entire town hall is getting air conditioned through central air. So there's a lot there, and that will take us 20 years to pay, and by the time it's paid, it will be obsolete. We'll have to do it again. But as far as, I think it's a good thing to have energy efficient things, like all the new LED. My home is 60% LED right now. but the town changing all the streetlights to LED and lights on the front of buildings, LED, I think that's a great thing. But I'm more concerned about, we've taken all those things out of capital, as Mr. Reddy said, we've taken a lot of things out. So now I want the capital budget to go down to $2 million a year
Okay, thank you.
from 3.
From 3, okay. I'll use my prerogative to be a little pushy here. All politics is local. Facebook, texting, email, blogging, watching this event on TV. Even letter writing is not really personal, and it's not a social contact in my view. Being here in this room, shaking your hands and talking to both of you is personal. Wouldn't you agree? Today I received a political ad in the mail, and which most folks would say was quite provocative. I have a 3-part question for the two of you, and I'll ask Joe to respond first. How many people actually called you personally today, or maybe the past couple days, and spoke directly about the topic of that piece? And I'm going to go through all 3 questions, if you don't mind. So how many people called you personally and spoke about the topics of the piece? Second, did you get any advice on how to respond to it from friends, confidants, and some call them handlers? And then finally, would each of you invite anyone who has a question on these topics and any other question, would you invite them to call you personally and talk to them, and maybe even give out your phone number at the end of your answer? And Joe, would you please respond?
Yeah, I would say I received probably 20 or more phone calls today. I have the literature here if you want it. It's a nice glossy brochure, and I thought it was really interesting. So, look, when I decided to run for public office, I realized that comes with taking a thick skin, and you know what? Not everyone's always going to be happy with the positions that you take. What I want people to know is that I have a process in which I go through making decisions that involves talking with residents, meeting with them, understanding what their concerns are, and I try to always make the best decision in the best interest of Chelmsford. And so, I certainly don't have the resources to respond in the same capacity to this mailing, but unfortunately, my family and friends, they love me, and they're great support, and they probably take it harder than I do. I read this, and some of it, in my eyes, is misinformation. But at the end of the day, I decided to make this run. You got to have a thick skin, and to me, I'm moving forward and campaigning.
Thank you. Bob?
Oh, also,
sorry. Yes, your
anybody
phone
can
number.
call me, 978-884-6972, and I will answer your questions.
Could you do that number again? I hate that when you get it on the answer machine.
978-884-6972, or email me at info@joeready.com.
And you'll answer the phone, and you'll talk to people that decide to call you.
I love talking to people.
Thank you. Bob, would you, do I need to restate that, or
No,
you're good?
no,
Thank you.
I know what the topic is, so. To be very honest with you, this is the first time I've seen it. I didn't get one at home. Not yet, anyway.
For you.
I haven't, well, no, you can keep it. Certainly, you can't control who likes you and who endorses you. On numerous occasions, I've spoken to the author and asked him to back off, and he just does what he wanted to do.
Bob, let me interrupt you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. How many people have called you personally and spoke to you directly about the topics on the piece? Second, did you get advice on how to respond from friends, confidants, and your handlers? And then finally, would you invite the public to call you personally? And again, personally is a phone call talking, not a text, not an email, not a letter in the mail. Personally is being able to talk to my selectmen candidates directly, because you offer your phone number, as Joe did. So,
Okay.
how many people?
I had no people. Maybe there was one.
Okay.
But like I said, this broke today in the mail, I think. And my handlers don't tell me how to answer questions. I make my own decisions based on facts. So, and that's the way I am. I'm independent. I don't kowtow to anybody on the issue of telephone. Everything that I've generated has my telephone number on it, and I put 2 telephone numbers on it. I make the mortal mistake of putting my cell phone and my home phone, because many times if they call my home phone, they're gonna get a recording because I'm not home. I'm working. So I give them 2 opportunities to call me, and I would certainly love to hear from people.
Would
And I
you
always
give
have.
would you give that number out to the
Yes.
audience and
Yes.
also for Joe in case he doesn't have your number?
Yeah, he's got some. Okay, my home phone is 978-256-8267, and I do have a recorder on it. I do screen calls, but I do listen to them. And my cell phone is 508-517-1195, and as long as I'm not in a meeting, I'll answer it.
Okay. Could you repeat the cell phone number one more time? Because I gave Joe two shots at
okay.
it too. Or whichever number you
Yeah,
prefer.
cell phone is the best, 508-517-1195.
And Joe, did you get the numbers you want out?
Yeah, I mean, you can call me at 978-256-3335. But again, my cell phone, 978-884-6972 is always the best to reach me.
Thank you. It's very important to talk to your representatives, to your selectmen. They don't get enough calls. Town meeting members don't get enough calls. It's wonderful to send an email, but when you get them on the phone on a Sunday afternoon, they have to talk to you. So please don't be shy and ask questions. I'd like a couple of questions from the press. And again, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, and we have a mic there so that folks can hear you.
Sure, thanks. Grant Welker from The Sun. OPEB has been a big topic in the race. If elected, would you want to set aside a certain amount of money each year, say $500,000, $1 million, whatever it would be? Would it depend on how much available free cash there is, or what would your personal policy be?
Who's first?
Let's see. Bob?
I'll do it first? Okay. I would be in favor of using some of our free cash towards that. Certainly not if we've only got if we have 800,000 in free cash, then I'd probably want to put maybe 50% of it to OPEB.
And Joe?
Yeah, I'd like to build it into our budget. I don't really like to have a fluctuation going on. And again, I'm into making sure that we honor the commitments that we've made. You know, it's debts that we took on long before I got here, but I feel committed to making sure that, you know, our seniors have the benefits that they once were offered. So I would put it into the budget, and I like the idea that Tom Gilroy brought forward of looking at putting it into department budgets as well.
Terrific. And Molly? Could you identify yourself and your paper, subscriptions and all that sort of thing?
Okay. Molly Lockman, Chelmsford Independent. I know there's a lot of capital projects pending in town, including the Center Village, but I didn't know if you guys had any objectives in terms of importance for any capital projects moving forward, as there are a lot.
And Joe, would you start?
Yeah, I would say the Center Village Master Plan, I had highlighted that at the beginning of my campaign as something that I'd like to try to keep pushing towards fruition. I think Jim Lane did an amazing job. I watched his presentation online when he went in front of the planning board. I thought it was excellent. The fact that we've been able to get the $5 million bond money not passed, but it's passed through the legislature, and it's moving on, hopefully, to the governor. And I think at this point, let's push our gubernatorial candidates to try to, get them to sign off on that money so that Chelmsford can try to rework the center so that it'll have better walkability, better setbacks, and enhance the community in general.
Thank you. I think Governor Patrick is in Panama. I don't know if he can sign down there.
I'll call his cell phone.
I'm sorry, that was a completely partisan comment.
Right.
And yes, I do have Governor Patrick's phone number on my cell phone, and I call it every once in a while. Preparation and candidate communications.
Yep. I didn't answer
Sorry,
didn't
I'm
answer.
sorry, go ahead.
that. Okay.
Bob.
As far as the capital projects go, the capital plan right now does not have that in its plan, and maybe further down in the future it might. But there will have to be some town money. The Mass legislators that came out last week made it very clear that this could be very long before it actually gets into our hands. And again, it depends on who the governor is and if they're going to sign off on it. But the projects, the capital budget itself, I've said several times, we should probably cut it from 3 to 2 million, because a lot of the big projects that were originally in there were energy-related renovations to buildings that we're not going to have to do now because it's being covered under the 18 million. Thank you.
Thank you. And sorry about that. This job of moderator is really tough.
Isn't it?
John and Dick, do you really want to do this? It's got to be worse with
You're learning on the
162
job.
people. I'm learning. I'm learning on the job. Preparation and candidate communications. Of the 4 contested, I should say of the 2 contested races, 4 folks running, 3 of the 4 candidates took out their papers on January 2nd, the first day that you could do so. And Joe, you pulled your papers on the very last possible date on February 7th, which was a Friday. Around that time, another potential candidate stepped out of the race. And there was an article in, I think, the Lowell Sun that you'd had a conversation with him, and then he threw his support behind you. Why did you wait until the very last minute, and why that conversation? Isn't it better to have 3 people running? I don't know that you convinced him not to run, but
So I threw my hat in the ring because I think I offer a different vision and leadership than Bob will offer the town. And I specifically think that we're going in 2 totally different paths. I did sit down with Glenn Cole. I would have sat down with Bob as well. He was at Beetle Fest that weekend, so I didn't get the opportunity to do it. But after that conversation, he liked a lot of what I had to say, and he said, you know what, I think we're going to end up splitting votes at the end of the day. So I like what you have to offer, and I'd love to see you be the next selectman of Chelmsford. And I appreciate that he gave me that opportunity. I do like to see volunteers get active and get involved, but it certainly gives Bob and I a chance to highlight what I think are major differences.
okay. And if I may, did you pick up any planks from that discussion from your what would have been the competitor?
I think we all have the same goal in mind, which is, we want Chelmsford to be a great town, but we also want to make sure that, we hold the people that are in charge of, I'll call it bureaucracy, we hold them accountable. And that's really, that's my goal. And when I told him that that's the mission of why I'm running for selectman, he thought I was going to offer the town a little bit more than what he was going to at that point.
Okay, thank you. And Bob, you were a selectman from 1993 to 96, and you ran for selectman last year against more than one other candidate. In those races, did other candidates call you and talk to you, discuss status or strategy and how to run? Strategy in Chelmsford, political strategy in Chelmsford is somewhat of a fine, well-oiled machine, I think, and there's a certain process that everybody seems to go through.
Yeah, the first time I received some advice from some of the selectmen back at that period of time. But this time, last year when I ran, I didn't hear from any of the other candidates. We don't typically, I guess, talk to each other about what we're going to do, but they know what you represent. But I'd like to get back to the question, though, that he answered.
It's your time.
And that's about running, and he's indicated in all his materials that he really wanted to be a selectman, and it's the family tradition and everything. Well, if that were the case, why weren't you there on January 3rd? I made the decision in December that I was going to run. So, why did it take till the end of the period to make that decision?
And Joe, could you please respond to that challenge?
Yeah, it's the same reason that we don't have a one-day deadline. I mean, the fact is I'm not coming here telling you that I'm a write-in candidate. They have deadlines for a reason, and I applied for the job within the time period desired. I thought it was a smart move to see what the landscape was going to look like. Maybe a candidate came forward that was even better than me, and I would have probably thrown my support behind them. But at this point, on that date, I felt like it was for the best interest of Chelmsford to throw my hat into the ring. And yes, I've always wanted to be selectman since I was 6 years old. That didn't mean that I was ready at that time. I feel like now in my life I'm ready, not to pun, but that's my reasoning.
Thank you. On the topic of conflict of interest, that's been one I've seen. Bob, first, you also ran a small business in town when you were on the board. How did this affect your consideration of the split tax rate? And having a business in town, did you vote on projects a little differently? The business background, Chelmsford business background, is how it would affect you personally. Some residents are really bothered that selectmen are in the real estate business or lawyer business or have a small business in town, and that gives them the ability to move things in a favorable way of how they make a living. You've been in that position. How do you deal with that conflict of interest?
Well, to be very honest with you, I usually rented from people in the developments that I was in, and it really didn't matter to me if there was classification or there was no classification. I was going to pay it as part of my rent anyway. So as far as projects were concerned, I never really had that many projects come before the Board of Selectmen that I'd have a conflict with. One particular article at town meeting back, way back, was to recall the center school. And I was giving heavy pressure from other members of the Board of Selectmen to sell it to the Lighthouse School. By the way, Lighthouse had 2 kids in the school. Chelmsford had 2 kids in the school at that time. And I voted to recall it. And I also supported the funding to refurbish it. So I don't think it affected me at all.
Thank you. Joe, having a business in town, how does this affect your consideration of the split tax rate? And having a real estate business in town, are you going to be able to vote on projects or anything that may have to do with property in town? Certainly real estate property and real estate brokers have an implicit conflict. Some residents are really bothered that selectmen being in the real estate business or a lawyer business might have an ability to move things around in a favorable way to how they make a living. And how would you answer that to people that might be concerned?
So before I decided to run, I did call the Ethics Commission to talk to them about being a real estate broker, being on the board. We went through many different scenarios of how I possibly could be in a conflict of interest, and it does affect my business. I certainly can't be trying to help clients buy land that the town is interested in buying at a certain period of time. There may be conflicts where I have to step aside, but as we went through it step by step, I came to realize that I really rarely ever run into a scenario like that, and I think the good of the community, I'm willing to forego a couple of opportunities that may come up to make money, just because I think that the community as a whole deserves it. So from that perspective, I'm not concerned. Next is the split tax rate. I'm a small business owner. I think supporting our main streets is the most important thing we can do, because they provide jobs and they're the lifeline of the community and building the tax base on the commercial side to offset residential tax base.
Thank you. I'd like to give you a chance. I'm going to run over a couple of minutes because I promised you 2 minutes apiece to close, and that'll get me right to 9 o'clock. But I want you to ask a question of Bob and Bob to Joe Can you, have you prepared a question to ask Bob that you'd like an answer to?
Bob, you said at the League of Women Voters debate that you feel a policy should be in place to give back at least half of the free cash. And then you said, and the other money, the town manager can do whatever he wants with it. I don't really care. Can you explain to the voters how that demonstrates accountable leadership?
Well, I think the accountable leadership and the fiscal responsibility is in taking the 50% and giving it back to the taxpayers. So it's certainly, I know that when this first came about and it was mentioned in a selectmen's meeting, there was a lot of groaning about it because Paul doesn't want a situation where he can't control all the free cash. So, some residents in town say, why can't we have 100% of it? It's our money. So, I thought this was a good arbitrary 50%. And so that's why I said it.
Thank you. Bob, do you have a question for Joe?
Yes. Joe, your voting record and your campaign promises show that Joe Reddy likes to spend. Other than from the taxpayers, where is the money coming from to pay for all your spending?
Well, I know you want to pigeonhole me as a spend guy, but I'm actually an invest guy, because at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you put money into these projects so that we're not floating money later on down the road. You've been kicking the can down the curb for so long. The reason we have to buy a new fire station is because the one that we had was crumbling into the ground. I think it's important that we put money into infrastructure. It's even more important that we put money into maintaining it. And that's part of the budgeting process. Governments have to spend money. The fact is that we have to do it in a fiscally responsible way, and that's what my leadership would bring.
You really didn't answer the question, Mr. Moderator. I asked him where he was going to get the money.
Could you re-ask that portion and
Yeah.
Joe give me a
Other
small
than-
paragraph answer to the question?
Other than
after
from
you-
taxpayers, where is the money coming from to pay for all the spending that you like
Yeah,
all-day kindergarten and downtown and all that other
Yeah,
good
sure.
stuff?
The money's coming from either, say the turf fields. A lot of the money came from preservation funds.
Yeah, that's history. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what you were pegging me with, is the fact that I've spend. But look at the fact that a lot of the money's going to come from the state for the center, master plan project. I'm not asking the taxpayers to bring more than the 2.5. I don't want an override. I would not support an override. But I think that we can fund some things within the budget, and I've also come up with some creative solutions that would free up some cash so that we can put some of these things into the budget. You didn't like the ESCO project, you voted against it, but the fact is that saved the town money. Those are projects we're no longer going to have to do, and we've taken that money away from the schools as a result. As a result of funding it. So I think there are funding sources out there. I'm not gonna apologize for wanting to educate our children.
Bob, if I may, I'll use my prerogative. Can you cite a couple of funding sources to perhaps pay for a program, maybe $500,000 or $1 million, that you might come up with as a way of funding outside of my pocket and that pile of money I put on the table?
Well, you certainly can't raise the taxes above 2.5%. But if a project is important enough, maybe it should go as an exempt, a Prop 2.5 exemption, like in the case of the fire station or even the fields. That could have gone to a townwide vote.
So a townwide vote might be a way to get more tax
additional-
money.
Yeah, additional
Joe,
money.
could you answer that same
Yeah,
challenge?
he's asking us to do overrides. That's going to increase the amount of taxes that.
How the question is, outside of taking the money out of my pocket, how could you fund a project that we need? Using fire station as an example, if we needed to fund that and you didn't want to take it out of the Prop 2.5 money, where might you look as a selectman?
Well, we'll either look at free cash. We'll look at savings from the the general insurance fund. You know, or you know what? Let's look hard at the budget and see if there's places that we can save money, whether it's on technology. I mean, I think it's worth going through and making sure that we have efficiencies in government. I'm not opposed to making sure that we eliminate waste.
Okay. And I know I'm running over a little bit. I have a great question, very simply placed, and I'd like a 15-second answer to this. Bob, can you cut the budget? And if you had a chance to cut the budget, where would it be?
Well, I think I've stated several times that the first place I'd start is in the capital budget. It's gone up to $3 million, and if you look at it every year, it's actually a little more because the money we don't spend in previous years, Paul, the town manager, feels that he's entitled to that. So he just feels that he should get it.
Okay.
So,
And Joe, if you had to, where would you cut the budget?
I wouldn't necessarily cut the budget. I think the government's about. I'd like to see level funded service, which means that we're not hitting taxpayers year after year for overrides or additional money. Create some sort of stability that people can count on. And as a lot of our major projects come off the board, we don't add huge projects. We maintain the buildings that we have so that we're not doing huge capital expenditures down the road.
Okay, thank you. We have a 2-minute closing statement at this point, and I thank everyone for staying a little bit longer. I appreciate that. And before anyone runs out of the room afterwards, there are signatures that we'd love on here, and I wanted to remind you, consider running for town meeting. Joe, could you start with your closing statement? And I'm giving this 2 minutes, please.
I'd first like to thank the Republican Town Committee for hosting this event. I'd like to thank the listening audience at home and the listening audience here. Especially like to thank Jim Lane for his service to the town. The things that he has done has been a great improvement to our community. So I'm Joe Reddy. I'm running for a vacant seat on the Board of Selectmen. There are fundamental differences between my opponent and myself. My opponent's policies do nothing to create value for our community or true tax relief. His free cash policy will give back money to the richest landowners and corporations. The seniors will ultimately be the people that lose out. And during his time as a selectman, taxes increased a monumental 23% in 3 years. When he left office, the residential tax rate was the highest in a generation and higher than our residential tax rate today. In contrast, I'm offering the residents real tax relief that can only be derived through hard work. My economic redevelopment policies will lower residential tax rates. My corporate and government partnership initiatives will enhance and drive the values of our schools. I love Chelmsford. I care for the residents, and I won't let my opponent's flawed policies and absentee leadership go unchallenged. This is why I'm running for the seat on the Board of Selectmen, and I respectfully ask for your vote for Joe Reddy on April 1st.
Thank you. And Bob, 2 minutes, please.
Yep. It's interesting about the taxes going up during that time because, as you know, town meeting makes all those decisions, and the town manager prepares the budget. But thank you for pointing that out. Thank you to the Republican Town Committee for sponsoring this debate, as well as the people who are here and those watching at home. My name is Bob Joyce, and I am running for the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen because I love Chelmsford. I believe that my experience, hard work, and leadership will help improve the quality of life for all Chelmsford residents. Over the last 25 years, I have served on many of our town boards and committees, including the Board of Selectmen, the Sewer Commission, and I currently serve as a member of the Planning Board and as a town meeting representative, and also served on the Neshoba School Committee. As I talk with residents, most are concerned with tax relief and slowing down the growth of their property taxes. We have beautifully renovated town halls, 2 of them, and a new fire station headquarters is underway. A new DPW building is about half finished and will be $13 million when it's completed, and 2 new turf fields. But we also have seniors in town living on Social Security who can't afford to pay their taxes. There's other people that are seniors that aren't on OPEB. As your experienced selectman, I will work hard for residents and neighborhoods do my homework on every issue, and continue to ask tough questions and hold people accountable. I am the experienced, independent, and unbiased candidate for the Board of Selectmen. My name is Bob Joyce, and on April 1st, I respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you.
And before these folks are excused, up in the front of the room is a trifold article, and you remember I said call people? This is where you get your cell phone numbers, and on the back side are your state and federal representatives. There's not a Republican in the lot. They're all very good people. Their phone numbers and emails are here. Grab one of these on your way out, put them in your cell phone, and try that number sometime. When you hear something on the news you don't like or you do like, call them, and there are your numbers right there. You can put that in your pocket. And I'd like to thank the two gentlemen, and I wish we had 2 seats for selectmen. Just one moment, and we're gonna close the session, if you don't mind.
Yeah, just, again, I want to thank the 4 candidates tonight. I think we had a great debate. Thank the 4 candidates. I also want to thank the roughly 80 people that were here in attendance that spent, 2 hours, 2 very important hours, very informative hours, and I thank you for participating and being quiet. And also, I want to especially thank Brian for leading this debate, and I think,
Yeah, you did
even
a
though
good
I'm
job.
not trying to demean the 2 candidates for moderator, but we have a write-in candidate here, if you want to. See, Republicans are funny, and we do relax, but I also want to thank a couple of my associates, Dee Miller, who provided the food and some of the setup, and Trace Askenberg and her mother, his mother that provided some of the pamphlets, and thank you all. Thanks for Molly and Grant for showing up and asking some questions. Grant, he was here on Tuesday with the League of Women Voters debate, and an article Wednesday morning, and I expect to be an article Friday morning at the Lowell Sun. So I'm not pushing the Lowell Sun, but he did write a good article on the League of Women Voters debate, and hopefully Molly will have a good article on her paper, which comes out next Thursday. I think it's next Thursday, right? So also the scouts that were here, thank them for adding a little class, and we need all the youth we can get, and they're the future of the country. We were the youth one time, and we didn't realize it, but we respect it now. And there's a couple of Andy Slinish is here, who's running for library trustee, and he's unopposed because he's such a strong candidate.
Wave. There we go.
Wave. And we have Dennis Galvin, who's running for state rep, who's here. So, and there's Katie Zazera, I believe, is here. Katie is.
Katie. Hi, Katie.
Katie's one of the GOP local coordinators, so I appreciate. We also have one of our school committee members here, Nick DeSilvio, and a couple of selectmen, was it Pat Wojcik? Wojcik and Jim Lanes, who we always recognized.
And Janet.
there's
And excuse me, I'm sorry, Janet, I always send Janet.
Kimberly.
We have good leadership. Chelmsford's a great town. And again, I thank Brian, so wrote his name, is Latina, for the write-in, if you want to write him in.
No, don't even think it.
Remember, he was out of the room when we selected the.
That's a true story. That's a true story. And
So again, thank you all, and enjoy some of the food, because, please take it home, and thank you all again for
And
participating. It was a great
one
night.
last thing before we applaud all these candidates. Would you all do me a favor? There's 4 of them in the room that are running for moderator and selectman. Would you find them and shake their hand, maybe the first time, last time you ever do it, shake their hand, thank them for the volunteer work that they've done, and the volunteer work that 2 of them will be doing for the next 3 years. It's a real personal thing. You got a connection, and you can call them up when there's a pothole. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.